Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this KTJ open event. I'm just going to wait a couple of seconds to let everyone into the room, and then we'll get started. Okay, well, as I said, good evening, everyone, and welcome to College Tuanku Jaffa. My name is Glenn Moodie. Students call me Dr. Glenn, and I'm very proud to be the principal of KTJ. And it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this virtual open evening. Well, with me this evening, I've got three other members of the KTJ community. I have Mr. Gary Slade, who's our Director of Boarding, and two of our students, VJ and Nevia, who are both in Form 3 in the secondary school. I'll introduce you to each of them a little bit later, and we can get their views on transitioning to KTJ from another school. Well, I joined the school in August 2018, and I've always found it to be a warm and welcoming environment, and also an institution which provides the highest quality of education. And I am a parent of the school as well. I moved to Malaysia having spent nearly 20 years working in private boarding schools in the UK, including most recently as the head of a school in Cornwall. Now, one of the things that surprised me in my early days at KTJ was just how similar this school is to those schools in the UK in so many ways. As you may know, KTJ was founded in 1991, making us one of the more well-established international schools in Malaysia. It was founded by three members of the Negeri Sembilan royal family and named in honor of their father, who was, of course, a king of Malaysia. They were inspired by their boarding experiences in the UK, and their vision was to provide a similar experience here locally in Malaysia, embracing the best of British and international education, but also firmly rooted within its Malaysian context. KTJ provides a comprehensive, all-round education, which we feel offers the best preparation for students' future lives, education, and careers. We believe in not just an academic education inside the classroom, but educating the whole person. This includes helping students to find their passions, building their characters, and giving them a global perspective. Now, underpinning all of this is a strong mission and ethos, which goes back to the founding of the school. At the heart of this are our values of integrity, empathy, and mutual respect. These values are central to the way the school is run and to the decisions which we make. Why do we do this? Well, it's because we live in a world where it is all about what I would call the what else. Lots of students have good grades, and we certainly aim for good grades here. But good grades just get you through the door. It is the what else which ensures you stand out. That's why we're so invested in our holistic approach, which includes developing what might be called soft or transferable skills, though I don't think these titles really do them justice. That's why we offer a boarding environment where both boarders and day students benefit from the infrastructure which this brings. Why do we need to do this? Well, it's because we live in a global village where the world is ever changing and changing fast, and where technology plays an ever increasing role in our lives. And of course, this is something which we have all become even more acutely aware of in the past 2 years. In this world, things like resilience, emotional intelligence, the ability to collaborate effectively really matter more than they ever have. It's important that students are adaptable and have a broad range of experiences, and we aim to provide them with this through not just what happens in the classroom, but through leadership opportunities, community service, extracurricular activities, special events, talks, workshops. What's more, this all happens within a warm and friendly and supportive environment. When I ask any student what is the best thing about KTJ, they say it is the people. And they are right. We believe our first and most important goal is to ensure students are happy. And we know that this is what parents want as well. I feel it's a privilege to work here at KTJ, and I'm sure your child would be very happy here too. Well, there will be a chance to ask me some questions a little bit later, but I'm now going to introduce the first of our other speakers. And just let me bring up the next slide. So we're going to be hearing from two of our students this evening, VJ and Nevia. They're both in Form 3, which is the third year of the secondary school. VJ joined us at the beginning of Form 2 and Nevia at the beginning of Form 1. And they're going to give you their views of what it's like moving to KTJ from another school. So at this point, I'm going to pass over to VJ to give us his view. VJ, over to you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And hi, everyone. My name is VJ, and I would like to tell you about my experience from transitioning from government school to an international school. Based on my memories, government schools are typically very strict, and their way of learning is more towards the textbook type. Whereas in KTJ, we would have discussions and maybe even debates in class. In international school, I just feel like learning are much more interesting. Every time in class, you would feel like going through a maze, and there are so many unknowns, and out of nowhere, a new knowledge will just suddenly pop out. It just makes it very interesting. Also, the teachers here are very diverse, and so every teacher have their own unique way of teaching. Another thing is that the facilities here are absolutely fantastic, and we have aircons and fans in every single classroom. And I still remember in government school, we used to have to open the window every morning. That was the only way of cooling ourselves down in the humid weather. We used to argue about how lucky the people sitting beside the window was. The seat would be very cool since the classroom was about 3 floors tall. And also in KTJ, our dining hall here is really, really huge. I can't forget how we used to sit on the floor to eat because all of the tables are occupied back in government school. And also, we only had choices between noodles and rice every day, except when we bring our own food. Next, we have lots of ECA here which are organized by teachers and even students. Whether from sports to cooking or debate, KTJ have lots of activities to keep us entertained. It doesn't just help us to have fun. We could also learn from this. There are ECA that teaches languages and even economics. I actually discovered my passion for basketball in these ECAs. And boarding is one of the happiest things you could ever experience in any type of school. There were once when me and my friend was having so much fun playing and talking, and it was after lights out. And out of nowhere, Mr. Slade came and he confiscated all of our phones. That moment when you realize you get caught, you will just regret it so much. But it was still a fun experience, and that incident didn't actually stop us because we still go to other people's room to talk. But here at KTJ, I met a lot of new friends, and they all have very interesting backgrounds. If you get to know more people here, there would be many coincidences. For me, I found out that one of my friends here have been in the same school with my best friend previously. It is exciting about how friendly and kind the people here are. I can't forget how they calmed me down when I felt homesick upon my first arrival here. It just feels like you have another family here at school. And I've always thought it was hard for me to make friends in an international school before I actually arrived here. But despite speaking a bad English, when I first came here, the students were willing to explain things to me in Mandarin and slowly turning it to English. It was one of the reasons why my English improved, simply because of the environment. It just feels like speaking English is compulsory here. If not, it will just make you look bad. I took that in and decided to make a change. That was what pushed me to learn the language as hard as I could. In just 1 year, I successfully read over 15 English books while noting down the vocabularies I didn't know. From being in EAL until getting a good score for English, I didn't even believe this was possible in 1 year. And my friends was the main reason I succeeded. The power of environment is really strong. It could change a person in a short amount of time. And I also had lots of fun through that process. Thank you.
Very much, Vijay, and a really good summary there of your experiences and the differences between KTJ and your previous school. Thank you very much for that. Well, at the end of the presentations today, ladies and gentlemen, we're very happy to take any questions you might have. There's a chat function on Webinar Jam, so please do place any questions you might have in there, and we'll try and answer them at the end. Particularly if you have any questions for Vijay and Nevia, who we'll hear from soon, please put those in the chat and we'll direct those questions to them so that you can hear it firsthand from the students who have been through the experience. Okay, well, one of the things that we do offer at KTJ is a range of scholarships. You can find out more about these on our website, but just to make you aware, we do offer golf and squash scholarships. We have a number of squash courts in school and also a golf course right next to the school. And these are sports that the Tunku Imran and Tunku Nakiden, who two of the founders of the school, are very keen on and very keen to support. At the same time, we also have music scholarships for the secondary school. You can find out more details about those on our website. And in terms of academic scholarships, we only offer these for the sixth form, but there are a number of academic scholarships available for the sixth form every year for students both joining us in August and in January. Right, I'm now going to pass over to Mr. Gary Slade, who's our Director of Boarding, who's going to tell you a little bit more about boarding life at KTJ. Gary.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Glenn. And good evening, everyone. As Dr. Glenn said, my name's Gary Slade, and I'm the director of boarding here at KTJ. And I'm actually also Vijay's house parent. So I think Vijay was revealing a few too many secrets there. So I'll have to do a bit more checking up there, Vijay. Yeah, just a bit of background for me. I'm from South Africa, but I spent 15 years in the UK before moving to Malaysia. From a boarding perspective, I've had 16 years boarding experience, with 4 of these being at KTJ. So I wanted to speak to you a bit about our boarding and life at KTJ tonight, because boarding is something we're extremely proud of here. Recently, we went through our reaccreditation with the Council of International Schools. And for the boarding element of the reaccreditation, we needed to meet 8 standards. We were extremely pleased that we exceeded 6 of these, and we received 4 major commendations within those 8 standards. So something we were really proud of. Also last year in 2021, we were named the International Boarding School of the Year for the British Boarding Schools Association in the UK. Again, a reward we were extremely proud of receiving. So I suppose the reason you're all here this evening is to try and find out what the benefits of an international school are. And for me, there is a few. I'll mention a few of those tonight. So first and foremost, I think an international school provides an international and multicultural outlook. Now at KTJ, we have just under 20 nationalities. So diversity and differences are something that are definitely celebrated. Also in a boarding community, lifelong friendships are something that develop. Due to the nature of school being continuous, bonds are often stronger than they are in day schools. And this is always telling when we see how emotional our students are when their time here comes to an end. I must say, from personal experience, I only boarded for 1 year at the end of my schooling career. And I must say, I'm still extremely close and hold such valuable friendships still today with those boys I shared that experience with. Equally, we provide the students a chance to grow every day. So more than half of our students' time is spent outside of the classroom, which gives them wide-reaching opportunities and also cultural links that will all benefit them a huge amount as they move forward in their lives. So I suppose also the question is, why KTJ? So why KTJ as opposed to any other international boarding school? Well, to answer that question, I think our boarding ethos is key. We are one of Asia's largest boarding schools with between 500 to 600 boarders living on site full-time. And we are extremely proud to offer a true boarding experience. Now, you might be wondering what I mean when I say that, but we don't sell the hotel-like boarding experience where students all have single rooms with ensuite bathrooms. We very much value the true traditions and values of boarding, where students share rooms, they get to know other people, and they share experiences with a whole range of people. Sometimes they'll be best friends with these people, other times not. And we feel that all of these processes and experiences are actually what makes the KTJ pupil the pupil they are by the time they leave us. Also, our reputation, we have extremely high A-level grades and an extremely high number of first-choice university offers. Our staff are another key element. You know, more than half of our staff actually come from Malaysia, but also our international staff cover a diverse and varied range of countries, which in turn allow for more intercultural opportunities for all of our students. Our pastoral care at KTJ is excellent. And in the house parent team, we have over 85 years of boarding leadership between us. At school, on site, we have school counselors, we have an on-site school doctor, and we have a 24-hour medical care. We firmly believe that a happy student will be a successful student. So with this, we make sure we do everything we can to make sure that our students feel comfortable and at home in their environment, because we feel that this will lay the platform for them to achieve everything they hope to in their time here. Equally, we encourage growth. And by this, I mean, you know, when a student arrives with us at KTJ, they don't need to have their life mapped out ahead of them and know exactly where they want to get to. It was only recently I interviewed a student, a girl who was coming to join us for Form 4 to start her IGCSEs. And when I asked her what her goals were for when she arrived at KTJ, it was so refreshing to hear her response, because they actually weren't academic focused at all. And she said, my goals are to make loads of new friends and have a whole lot of new experiences, which I thought was brilliant and something you don't often hear from a student when they're sort of having that initial interview when they arrive at a school. Equally, as Dr. Glenn's already alluded to, I think life beyond the classroom is so important, and it's a massive aspect of our lives here. Extracurricular activities are a big part of our daily life, and we offer over 90 of these on a weekly basis. These things range from cultural events to sports, to music, to drama, to artistic clubs, and so on. Student leadership is something we are driving and trying to grow every year. And we offer, certainly the senior students in the school are offered leadership positions. All of them are offered leadership positions should they want them. Equally, we've been trying to promote and push this in the junior end of the school, and a lot more of our junior students are now also receiving the benefits of receiving leadership opportunities early on in their schooling. We offer enrichment programs for sixth form and also recently for Form 1 to 5 students. And these things, again, they go out of the sort of realms of the normal curriculum which the students are studying. I know some talks the students have listened to recently have covered topics such as the end of the world from a science and religious perspective, life of a big city lawyer, Socrates, all there is to know, and also is Big Pharma bad, just to name a few. Now, if students are boarders or day students, house competitions are a major part of our lives here. So we offer over 20 house competitions annually. And again, these range from singing to drama to quizzes. And what these allow students to do is that it gives them the chance to participate, to manage, to plan events, and most importantly, it teaches them how to win and lose, which is a great thing to be learning in their schooling years. School competitions, obviously for the past 2 years, these have been, there haven't been too many of these, but as soon as we can, we will be jumping at the opportunity to get all of our students competing both nationally and internationally in sporting events on offer. We also have a weekend and holiday committee, events committee, which look after events on public holidays and throughout the weekends. And this makes sure that all of our students have lots to look forward to on their downtime on weekends and indeed holidays. Then lastly, for me, you heard from Vijay already. He mentioned a lot of our facilities. So I'll just touch on one or two. Just our boarding facilities are first class. All of our boarding houses have just been recently renovated. So the rooms and games rooms and pantries and so on are all of a very high standard. And we're extremely proud of what we offer all of our students. We have a 650-seater auditorium, which we use for assemblies and all gatherings and events. The students love the fact we have a shop on site. We have a coffee shop and a cafe that the students use. And also we have a tuck shop, which is available to the students during break times and also in the evening. Okay, so I think I'll leave it for there, but please do ask any questions and I'll be happy to ask those later on. Thank you, Dr. Ben.
Thank you very much, Gary. Right, okay, we're going to now pass on to our second student speaker for this evening, who is Nevia. Nevia is in Form 3, just like Vijay, and she joined the school at the beginning of Form 1, which is right at the beginning of the secondary school. Nevia, over to you.
Okay. Hello, dear parents. It's my pleasure to meet you. My name is Nevia. I'm a house prefect in Nakia. When I first came to KTJ, not gonna lie, at first I was very uneasy and scared. But luckily, I met a lot of good friends and good house parents to take care of me. Because I came from government school, at first I'm a little unaccustomed to the way of education here. But I especially like the way of teaching here. The teachers don't really assign a lot of homework to the students. It's like only 2 to 5 homework a day. And I know that at this point, parents may think that about how to work hard and how to get good grades without putting pressure on their children. But that's not the case. It varies from person to person. So this makes studying here less stressful, but push you to study as well. In a classroom, there's lesser students compared to government schools, so teachers can be more focused on students and they can get better grades as well. And also, I came here as a Form 1 student, which has been about 3 years. So I can be very honest and very well informed to tell you that it was quite a struggle to me to learn English because I spoke Chinese with my family or my old school friends from government school. Like, I was afraid to open my mouth and speak because my English wasn't that good enough. And I was afraid people would make fun of me. But luckily, I took the bold step of reaching out to my friends and I was successful in making friends. So if you are a person who is shy and don't dare to make new friends, be brave enough to take that step and you will have lots of friends. At least there is someone who can help you when you're in trouble. And another difficult thing to me is I get homesick almost every night. And I remember one night I heard someone was crying and it scared me seriously. And then, yeah, it was my friend, luckily. Then I crawled into her bed and cried with her. It was a very funny memory to me and her. And besides, we have a lot of Japanese, Korean, Chinese, or Muslim, so you can learn different languages from them, which is also a skill. Other than that, the thing I like about KTJ is that there's swimming pools, which they don't have in government schools, and their field trips are really huge. When I was in government school, I was very dependent of my parents, and ever since I became a boarder, I have felt more independent and mature in a way where I became more understanding of others. And I also managed to find myself comfortable in school without my family. So overall, KTJ is a really nice place, no matter the people, the environment, the teachers, they are super nice and friendly. And looking back at my own difficult path, I would say if you never experience it, learn it, or meet new people, you will never know how wonderful, how splendid, how brilliant you are right now. Thank you so much.
Much, Nevia. And if I can ask everyone, all the speakers, to turn on their cameras now. So we heard some great views about transitioning to an international school from Vijay and Nevia, and you might have some more questions for them. We've already got a lot of questions in the chat, so we are going to move on to those now and get started with those. Now, Nevia, you mentioned homesickness, and I wondered, do you still feel homesick ever, or is that a thing of the past now?
Yeah, it's a past right now.
Yeah. So you do get used to it, don't you? And it's something that, yeah. So there's a question here. Would it be too young to start boarding in year 7? That's Form 1. Now, you started boarding in Form 1, didn't you?
Yeah.
So I assume you would say it's not too young. But what are your views on it?
So for me, like, there's not like too young or too old to like to be independent, because you don't need to worry when others are still worrying. Like, you are just experience it earlier than the others. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Gary, do you want to say anything about boarding in as a Form 1? Often it's harder for parents than it is for students to.
It certainly is. I generally, I always say parents are always worried when students start at a young age. I must say, at a previous school, I've had boarders as young as 7 years old before. And I would say for students, the most important thing, the minute a student finds a friend, life becomes easy in a boarding house. So I would say, no, Form 1 is a great age to start. I think the younger you start in boarding, the easier the process becomes. We've got quite a lot of Form 1 boarders at the moment, and we had a lot of them arrive this January, and also quite a few arrive in September last year, and they've all settled in amazingly well. So I think Form 1 is a good time to start, to be honest, because you would get the full value of the junior house which they would be entering into.
Thank you. Right, there's a couple of questions here which I think are more sort of aimed at primary, so I'll try and answer those. There's one about entering the 3rd grade, which I assume is referring to the primary school, and it says about managing online classes during COVID-19. Well, I'm very proud to say that in the 2 years since COVID started to have an impact on schools in Malaysia, we've only lost 2 days of teaching, and they were the very first 2 days when we had to go online. And that was because, believe it or not, 2 years ago, we had to spend some time ensuring that all of our teachers knew how to use Zoom, which is something that we would now see as pretty much second nature. But since then, we've never lost a day of teaching. We have obviously had periods of time when we've had to move online, and there are still times when students need to be online now they might be close contact, or they, occasionally a student might have COVID as well, or there might be another reason why they need to be online. So in those situations, we do offer an online option. It's a bit different in the primary and the secondary, but it includes a face-to-face option via Zoom, and we make great use of Google Classroom. We're a Google school, and we use the whole of the Google suite. BJ, what was your experience like learning online?
For me, I feel that I do have a timetable or a schedule for when I wake up and when I have a rest. And for me, the teaching is just very fantastic. Yeah. You wouldn't feel bored, and there would be lots of discussion. Yeah. And between lessons, you would actually have breaks, so you wouldn't feel so tired.
Yes, and even when you're at home, if you don't turn up, we phone your parents, don't we? So there's no escape. You have to attend lessons, and we think that's important to keep the same sort of structures going that you would have when you are in school. But of course, in a time like this, we want to encourage everyone to be in school when they can be. Related to that was another question about what happens when there is a positive COVID case. And of course, there is a large number of cases in Malaysia at the moment. And so it is impacting upon all of us wherever we are. Luckily, the Omicron variant is mild, and particularly in young people, and particularly in those that are vaccinated, which almost all of our students in the school and certainly all of our staff are vaccinated. And so we have been able to carry on. But if a student were to test positive for COVID, they are immediately isolated, and their close contacts are identified, and they're isolated too. Now, with Borders, we can do that in school. We have areas such as the health centre, and we can cordon off areas of the boarding house if we need to, and in order to isolate students for a period of time. And they continue to learn online during that period of time until such time as they can be released and go back to normal lessons. If students live close to KTJ, often their parents want to come and pick them up in that situation, and they'll go home as well and stay at home for that time and again, engage with lessons online during that period. Another question which I think I need to answer is, what is the percentage of English native teachers at KTJ? Well, I think we're 43% expat teachers and 57% Malaysian teachers. It'd be hard to say what an English native teacher is. Gary, as you heard, has 15 years experience in the UK. I have 20, but neither of us are from the UK. Gary's from South Africa and I'm from New Zealand. And I think the same would go for our Malaysian teachers. Many of the Malaysian teachers at KTJ have taught A-level for more years than I have, and so they're extremely experienced in what they do. But we have a mixture of teachers, as a lot of international schools do, both local and expat. In the primary school, it tends to be mainly expat teachers leading the classes in the primary school. Okay, I've got a question here. I'm not sure if this was posted before you started speaking or not, Gary, but it says, could you explain the KTJ boarding system on taking care of boarders? What kind of boarding education is offered? So I wondered if you could perhaps say a little bit more about who is in the house and what their roles are.
Yes, of course. So each house, we've got a junior girls' house and a junior boys' house. That's with Form 1 to 3 students. And we also have a junior day boarders house for our day boarding students and in Form 1 and 2. Towards the end of Form 3 or at the beginning of Form 4, students move up into senior houses. So from sort of Form 4 onwards, I know Nevia and Vijay are quite excited about the prospects of moving into senior house and having a bit more space and freedoms. I think the junior element of boarding works really well because, when they arrive and start their boarding lives, they're very much taken care of in a slightly different way, in a more nurturing way, as you would expect for young boarders. So we try and get them into the boarding process. And then, we know it's working well when we have people like Nevia and Vijay who we can see are ready to move on, because the senior houses obviously offer, more independence. There's a bigger house. They're living there with senior students. They have smaller rooms and so on. Within each house, there's also a house parent. So each house has a house parent. So most of your communication would filter through your child's house parent at KTJ. And then each boarding house has a team of 5 staff members, with the house parent leading the boarding house. Then you've got 3 boarding tutors who help with duties and also the day-to-day management of the house. And then each house also has a house matron who sort of deals with laundry, day-to-day care and medical needs of the students. So that's kind of how the boarding system is run.
Okay, thanks, Gary. So there's a question here about minimum English level for entry. Now, that depends on a little bit on what year group you're entering, but for the primary school and for the lower years of the secondary school, that can be a very low level of English. And in fact, in some cases, students do start with us with no English. Now, I think in both Vijay and Nevia's case, you started come from a school where you were learning in a different language. So, Nevia, what was your experience like, and how much English did you feel you had before you came to KTJ in Form 1?
Oh, I actually took about half year to learn English, like half year. But now it's not like my English now is very fluent or good. I still have a lot of things need to learn. Yeah, but it took me about like half year to learn English and speak. Yeah.
So in 2.5 years, I think you've done an amazing job.
Thank you.
What about you, Vijay? How much English were you speaking before you came to KTJ?
Yeah, I tried to train English before I came here, but that didn't work very well. But when I came here, I didn't speak very well English, but the students here are amazing and they were willing to talk Mandarin to me. So I got through that process pretty quickly, because also my teachers is willing to help me and help me to do extra work. So I got through that within 1 month or 2.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you both. And in his presentation, Vijay mentioned EAL, which is English as an additional language, which is a subject, and students who need extra help with English, they take that as a subject. so that they have a specialist support with developing their English skills, because, of course, a good level of English is going to be important for accessing IGCSE and A-level exams. For students wanting to join in Form 3 and above, there will be a higher level of English needed. We do a test which includes a verbal section as part of the entry requirements. And so within that, we do judge the level of English of students and make a decision on whether we're able to support them and whether they are able to make the necessary standard they will need in order to succeed at IGCSE or at A-level. Right, okay, so let's move on to the next question. Is there any criteria for parents to consider before sending their child for boarding? Mr. Gary, what do you think? Anything you would want parents to consider before they send their child to boarding?
No, not at all. I think boarding, the journey of boarding is different for everyone, to be honest. And I think, as you've alluded to already, Dr. Glenn, is that I think parents need to be willing to sort of let their children arrive and thrive at a boarding school. I think that's key. You know, as I mentioned earlier myself, at the beginning, we're very good at sort of making sure the communication channels between school, parent, and child are good, because we need you as parents to be part of the boarding journey. We don't expect you to just leave them and not be a part of your children's lives. I think it's very important that you sort of start the journey with them. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there's any personality type that would be better suited to boarding. I think all sorts of different students love the boarding experience for a variety of different reasons. So I would say any student is capable of enjoying boarding, certainly.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a question here. Do you grade work such as assignments and tests? If so, how often? Well, it's not really an easy question to answer because I'm not sure what age group you're talking about in that question. And also it's going to vary from teacher to teacher. It's going to vary from level. But if you're talking about marking work and teachers reviewing work done by students, that's done very regularly. Students, particularly in secondary school, will usually submit their work online, and it's usually marked online by the teachers as well. Nevia, do you get lots of assignments that you have to hand in and get marked by the teacher and handed back? Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Wait, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, just tell us about your experience. In a normal week, you know, how many assignments might you get to, say, do for homework or tests and lessons, and what would a normal week be for you, and how much feedback are you getting from your teachers?
Oh, so like I did mention just now, it's like the teachers don't really assign a lot of homework. It's like 2 to 5 homework a day, which is not too much, not too many for me. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And do you feel you get lots of feedback and guidance on what you need to do to improve?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Vijay, have you got anything to add on that, on assignments and homework?
I just had 2 tests this week, and yeah.
So tests are what we would call summative assessment, and that's a summary of how students have performed. We do tend to focus more on formative assessment, as you might expect, which is assessments which can inform us, inform teachers on what they need to do to help students move forward, and inform students on how they can improve and move forward, and where perhaps areas of weakness and things like that are. And that's much more important to us than giving grades at most points. One of the things the students have to do is they have to review their grades and their report each term with their mentor, and they write their own targets as well, which are seen by parents. So that's part of the process in the secondary school. So may I know how many classes there are in each form in the secondary, and how many students there are in each class? Well, our numbers tend to grow as we go up through the school. So in Form 1, we often have 40 to 50 students, and the majority of those will be day students, and they're in 2 or 3 forms given the number. We tend to cap numbers in the secondary school at 20 for a class, and at IGCSE and A-level, those classes might be smaller than that as well. The numbers gradually grow to sort of by Form 3 being 100 in the year group, and by Form 3 or Form 4, the boarders in the year group become the majority. And then boarding becomes compulsory in the sixth form. In the sixth form, we have about 285 students across the 2 year groups. So there is a bit of an inverted pyramid in the secondary school where the numbers do grow. And I think that's partly because families feel comfortable with sending their children to boarding at different age groups. And so that is also reflected in the fact that there is a greater number of day students than boarders in Form 1. That starts to even up by Form 2 and Form 3, and then the boarders sort of come into the majority because there are more students joining the school by Form 4. I think there was also a question about class sizes in the primary school. Again, class sizes are fairly similar in the primary school, a cap of 22 in a class in the primary school, with 1 teacher and 1 full-time learning assistant, as we call them. Other schools call them teaching assistants. And in the early years in reception, that would be a maximum of 18 students. So I think day students do feel very much part of the school. It's important that if you are going to join the school as a day student, that you're prepared to embrace elements of the boarding ethos. A day student who wants to go home immediately after lessons at the end of each day is not going to make the most of their time at KTJ and might be better off in another school. We have ECAs after school, we have house competitions, and it's really important that day students participate in those and also visit their house regularly, become part of the house. All students, whether day or boarding, are connected to a house. We've got some more questions here about English and entrance. As I said before, there is a test we do which looks at verbal reasoning and English, and also looks at mathematical reasoning in a few other areas. If the verbal reasoning score is low in that, we then do some other tests just to check your child's level of English. There's a short writing task and a short speaking task, and we make an assessment as part of that. It's not, I wouldn't say it so much as a hurdle that we put in the way for students to jump over, but we just want to be sure that if students come to us and are going to need a lot of support with their English, that we're going to be able to provide that support, because we want all students at school to be able to thrive. How will KTJ get the best out of my child? If my child is behind, how will the teacher adapt to meet the needs? Okay, so how will KTJ get the best out of my child? I think the question, I would turn that question around. It's more, how would your child get the best out of KTJ? And that's by embracing all of the opportunities we have at KTJ. It's going to depend on the age of the child as to how much we would expect them to take responsibility for that for themselves. But there is an expectation that everyone gets involved in areas of school life outside of the classroom, as well as inside the classroom. Teachers and learning assistants and others will be monitoring very closely the progress that students are making. We have tracking systems in both schools where we look at whether students are reaching the levels we would expect. And when there are issues, we have a whole range of interventions that we can put in place in order to support those children. And that might be in the classroom, or it might be also at times where there is more of a need for children coming out of the classroom to have some specialist lessons as well. That would always be following consultation with parents. How do you instill the values of the school in the students? That's a really interesting question. It was observed in our most recent Council of International Schools reaccreditation that it was well instilled in all members of our community. So we do believe it is well instilled. But Vijay and Nevia, well, let's start with Vijay. how do you feel the values of the school play a part in our lives?
For me, I learned to give respect here to the teachers and even students, and I don't think they teach them in government schools, so I really like those, and it really helped me a lot. Yeah.
Nevia, have you got anything to add to that?
For me is communicate. Yeah, communicate, because I used to be like very shy and very scared to share my ideas to the people. So once I like in KTJ, I started like try to communicate with others so that like the people can understand or know what I want. Yeah, and yeah, like what my ideas is.
Yeah, and one of the things that will happen at KTJ is whenever we're making any decisions, particularly big decisions, we'll be taking the KTJ values and guiding principles, as we call them, into account as part of that. We really do live by our values at KTJ, much more so than any other school where I have worked. We have three core values of integrity, empathy, and mutual respect, but we also have other guiding principles as part of that. There's a big, we spend a lot of time talking about equality, diversity, and inclusion at the moment, which is obviously a big topic all around the world. We also talk a lot to students about being upstanders rather than bystanders, and I know through their actions that students do behave, do take that on board and do upstand when they need to and raise issues where they see them with us. And I think one of the things I really value about KTJ students is they're not afraid to raise issues. I think that's what Nevia was talking about, as well as in her answer, is that the students will be very, generally very comfortable about raising things with us that they think are not right. And we believe that's important, that they have a voice there and that they feel that they can exercise that voice. Okay. I think some of these other basic questions have been, are all the students back in school in classes? Generally, they are all back in school. We have some students online. We do have to still offer, under government guidelines, an online option. And a few students have taken that option, not many. And occasionally students have to go online because they might be a close contact either in school or at home, and therefore can't attend lessons for a period of time. So we continue to offer an online option, but we've found that after a couple of years, most students would much rather be in school whenever they can, and their parents would much rather they were in school as well. So even last academic year, there was a period in the final term a long period when we're online, and yet most of our boarders decided to stay in school through that period, even though they couldn't have face-to-face lessons. But all students are back in school, or can be back in school. How similar is KTJ to a British public school? Well, I think I answered that in my introduction, that I was very surprised, as someone who has run and worked in several boarding schools in the UK, just how similar it was. I think it functions in many ways the same as a school, those sorts of schools in the UK. But I think the beauty of KTJ is it also recognises its Malaysian context, and I think that's really important. We're preparing the future leaders for Malaysia and Southeast Asia, and I think it's important that we recognise the context in which we are, as well as recognising other contexts through our, developing global perspectives. How does KTJ manage students' electronic devices like handphone, tablets, etc. in the boarding house? Okay, Vijay, can you remember what are the rules on mobile phones and tablets in the boarding house?
In Nakia, we are able to keep our own electronic devices, except we have limits. For example, we end our school at 3:30, and we actually have a rule where if you don't tidy your bed or clean your stuff up, you would have the 4 to 6 rule, which is actually you are not allowed to game during that time.
Yeah. Okay. And what about Nevia? Can you remember the rules around school for mobile phones?
Oh, you are not allowed to use your phone in dining hall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like you have to like
Talk to people. Yeah.
talk.
But give me an example of somewhere where you are allowed to use your mobile phone. Where are you allowed to use it in school, apart from the boarding house? Where could you use it? Where could you go during the school day and use it?
The art.
Library. Yeah, you could. Yeah, and I think that's important. Then the point there is we have areas in school where you can use your mobile phone freely, areas where you have to ask teacher permission in order to use mobile phone, and areas where you're not allowed to use them. And those rules apply to both staff and students. And that's to do with good manners. It's also to do with educating students on appropriate use of mobile devices. But we don't ban mobile devices, and that's for a very good reason. These are going to be parts of all of our lives going forward from now on. And it's really important that students learn how to use them appropriately. And that includes not just when to use them, but also how to use them, and particularly how to use things like social media and how to have positive relationships online and things like that, which are also covered as part of our PSHEE program, which is something that all the students in the secondary school do on a Monday afternoon and is done at various other times during the week in the primary school. There's a question here, if I choose not to the boarding option, do I have to pay for meals if my child does not prefer to board? Well, actually, even for day students, meals are included, or at least lunch is included within the fees. So we try not to have too many hidden charges. We try to include pretty much everything we can in the fees. I know a lot of schools charge extra for things like textbooks and all sorts of added things that they add on. We don't do that. There are a few ECAs where we bring in an outside provider, and we do charge extra for that. There is occasionally trips for which we charge, but they're not compulsory. We do have some compulsory residential trips, but they're free. They're included within the fees. So we try and keep those extra charges to a real minimum, because we know how much they are an annoyance to parents, and we believe it's important to be upfront with what the cost of the education will be. For students coming from overseas, would you need to quarantine before you attend lessons and boarding? Yes, well, under current Malaysian requirements, you have to quarantine for a period of time between, rules have changed recently. Help me out, Mr. Gary. Is it 7 and 10 days still, or is it 5 and 7 days now?
5 and 7 days now. But yeah, we're hoping that will all change fairly soon, to be honest.
Yeah, I think certainly by the beginning of next academic year in August, there will be no quarantine requirements in Malaysia, is certainly the prediction at this stage. But at this stage, there is still a quarantine period for entering the country. No quarantine at school, because obviously if you're coming in as an international boarder, you've done that quarantine in a hotel. And we usually have a preferred hotel that we recommend to families. Hotels that we work very closely with. How does the school handle a positive case of COVID in class? Do they go back home and go online? Well, we have our own school doctor, and we take advice from him, and he leads the decision making. He also consults very regularly with PKD, the district health office. At this stage, it tends to be that in the primary school, if there's a positive case, the whole class will be required to go online, usually for a period of a week. It's not the case in the secondary school because of the way the school is set up, and because of the fact that secondary students are fully vaccinated. So there is more flexibility, certainly in the secondary school, and the close contacts tend to be fewer in number in the secondary school than they do in the primary school. I'm hoping that the vast majority of our primary students will be vaccinated over the next couple of months, and that should give us greater flexibility in the primary school. But looking forward, I think these rules are going to change significantly in the coming months anyway. So if you're looking at KTJ for August, I don't think the current sort of procedures are likely to be applying then. we are going through an Omicron surge, and I think we've just reached the peak in Malaysia. And I think the predictions is that the numbers will go down fairly swiftly after this, and things will get much easier, as we've seen in other countries which have had this peak. Can I prepare lunch for my own child since I live nearby and send it over? Well, they can bring it in the morning. It'd be pretty hard for you to send it over during the course of the day, but they can bring it with them in the morning, certainly. And there are things like microwave ovens in the boarding houses, but we certainly would prefer students to eat in the dining hall unless there are particular dietary requirements which we can't meet, and that would be unusual because we'd usually try and meet any dietary requirements. Extracurricular activities, a few questions about those. Not everything is running at the moment, and we're not able to bring in outside providers. We're running what we can. Mr. Gary, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yes, I think it's been great to be able to offer more of these in recent months. But of course, inter-school activities are not happening. We're very pleased we can now hold intra-school events, so like house competitions, which have been a great sort of thing to get going again for all the students. But it is starting to open up. So, a lot of our sporting events are taking place in fairly normal form as what we were used to before. But yeah, we feel by next year we should be up and running fully again. Thank you.
Related to that is a question about peripatetic music lessons or individual music lessons. We offer those, and there's also practice facilities in school for students. So even if a student is a boarder, they can continue to learn. And in fact, it's probably much easier for them to take their lessons in school, whether they're day or boarding, rather than have to, parents to have to take them somewhere else for those lessons, since we offer them in school. A question about IGCSE or SPM. We only offer IGCSE. We don't offer SPM. Byod policy, which is our bring your own device policy. It's compulsory from year 7. So the first year of secondary school, all kids have to have a device in secondary school. And it can be a tablet or a laptop. And increasing numbers of students are using tablets with styluses these days. They find it easier. Some have both, of course. Most have phones, but a phone is not appropriate for every situation. So there is a requirement to have a tablet or a laptop. And we don't specify a device. That's for parents to decide on and to purchase, which gives you the flexibility depending on your budget. And also, if you already have a device when you join the school, there's no need to get a new device necessarily. Are students allowed to stay at boarding during term break? They are during our short breaks. They're not usually during our longer breaks, although we have made exceptions during COVID, particularly for international students, to allow them to stay in. But normally in the bigger holidays, so those would be at the end of each term, and we have 3 terms, and also a 1-week holiday in the middle of the term. Students, unless they have an exam, would leave the school during that period. There's a question about percentage of international students in the primary school. I think that if you scroll back down the chat list, that has already been answered. And if it hasn't, I'm hoping Kamaria, who is doing some of the online chat, will put that online. Let me just check if I've missed any other questions. I'm wanting
Dr. Glenn, could I just jump in there on that one, please? I can see there's quite a few questions about the primary school. And just to let you know, we are offering boarding to year 6 students in the primary school on a full-time basis from next year. We've started it this year, and we've had a few primary students join the junior boarding house, which has been great. But primary boarding for primary students in year 6 is definitely an option going forward.
Thank you. And I'm just going to finish with 2 questions for you, Gary. The first is about seniors and juniors and whether they share the same room in a boarding house.
Yes. So as best we can, we keep them separate. And this is for obvious reasons because, of study habits. Firstly, we found it's one of the main benefits of boarding is students get to study together and sort of share knowledge and, go through things with people in the same year group as them. Also, things like bedtimes and things are different in different years. So where we can, which is most of the time, we manage to keep different forms in different rooms. So now certainly in the junior boarding house, all the Form 1s will be together, and the Form 2s will be together, and Form 3s, and so on.
And when there's the odd exception, it would only be 1 year difference as well.
Yes, yeah.
And sort of related to that, questions about bullying. And I know that's a question lots of parents have about boarding schools. Will there be bullying? Would you like to?
Look, I think we could never sit here and lie and say no bullying never exists in our school, because I don't think there's a school in the world who could say that, honestly. Bullying is sometimes a part of school life, but I think how you manage the situation is really important. Is bullying a problem at KTJ? No, it's not. We do have the odd isolated incident, but I think it's more about educating our students about how they deal with bullying, and also more about educating those who are doing the bullying. I certainly find that a lot of this happens more in junior years. And when you've spoken to the student who's involved and they realize the effect that they're having on someone else, the bullying quickly stops. So I think bullying for me is certainly about education, and it's definitely not a problem at KTJ. But yes, from time to time it does rear its head.
Okay, thank you. Right, now, if there are any other questions, please do contact our registrar. If I could ask the three of you to turn your videos off now, just so I can see all of that slide, that would be very useful. So firstly, I'd like to thank Vijay, Gary, and Nevia for joining us this evening and for giving us their views on KTJ. Very much appreciated. What are the next steps if you're interested in KTJ? Well, visit our website. There's a lot of information on our website, including about scholarships. You can get in touch with our admissions team to book a consultation with a member of the senior leadership team and a tour of the campus. And we'd love to welcome you to the school and show you around. As part of that, there will be more of an opportunity to answer the specific questions to you, which we haven't been able to get to this evening. But I really appreciate you joining us this evening and for such an interesting range of questions. And thank you very much. And I hope we will see you again soon at KTJ. Thank you. Good evening.